Listen closely to those three readings. There is a common theme there. And the common theme is journey. The father of three world religions has chosen to, and he has no support. This is the amazing thing about Abraham. He has no support for this. He does not belong to any other religion that says yes to what he's doing. He has no theology. He has a relationship with a God whom he trusts. And when this God speaks to him, he responds. And he goes on this journey, a journey of faith, a journey of transformation. A wandering Armenian will end up in a world completely different from his own. We come to Paul. Paul talks about us standing firm in faith and not giving in to all the temptations that are around us and all the distractions that can take a hold of us. And he makes a promise that we will journey to a new way of being, our bodies transformed as Jesus' body, the risen Christ, was transformed. We will enter into change. We will be called into a new way of living. And finally, we come to the gospel. And we hear all these gospel stories told by different gospel writers. And, unless we pay attention to each writer, we don't notice much difference. But in this one, for example, Matthew and Mark have always said that Jesus was now on his way to Jerusalem to suffer and to die. And then he had this mountaintop experience. But in Luke, it's not that way. He's not yet started his journey. Luke pairs last week's reading, the temptation in the desert, with this week's reading, the transfiguration, as preparatory for Jesus' journey to Jerusalem. And he calls that journey an exodus. He says that Elijah and Moses are talking about how Jesus was going to have his exodus into Jerusalem. What is the exodus about? It's setting free. Jesus is going to set us free as Moses set us free, as Elijah set us free. There's a new freedom waiting for us as he will march through death to life. Now, this is a preparatory thing, what's going on right now. I would say to strengthen Jesus, but also to kind of strengthen us. I think we've all had those temptations that Jesus had, and I hope we can remember our mountaintop experiences. Can you remember your mountaintop experience where you were truly close to God? Sometimes they come and go, and we get so busy with something else, we forget them. And it says today in the gospel, different again from Matthew and Mark. Matthew and Mark has Jesus telling them, Peter, James, and John, not to say anything. But in Luke's gospel, they choose not to say something. And I think this is probably a huge problem in our church today. All of us have God experiences. All of us have been touched by God in one way or another. And we never tell anybody. It's a big secret. I don't know if we're afraid we'll be laughed at, or we won't seem sophisticated, or people will say, well, that's the best you got, I don't know what it is or why we won't tell the story. I questioned myself this week about what mine was. And it's a very simple one. I've been out of the church, out of the priesthood for 8 years. And I was saying Mass in Mary Immaculate for the kids, the grade school children. And it was the first time I said Mass in about 8 years. And I had no idea what I was going to say to those kids. They were just a mystery to me. And I got up there and I preached. And there's a lot of parents there because they wanted to see what this alcoholic priest looked like, that was talking to their children. And I finished my homily, and everybody stood up and applauded. Wow. Now you would think I'd blush, I'd get warm, I'd think, oh, cool. I became ice cold. I turned and I walked up to the altar, and I was saying to myself, my God, what am I going to do next week? No ego here at all. And this is the peak experience. This voice very clearly said to me, don't worry, you didn't do anything this week. And he matched my sarcasm, he matched my personality very well. And I have never, ever forgotten that. And it moves me every time I stand up to speak to you. I'm not doing anything. God is here with me. And that's my transforming experience. And I need you to know about that. I've told it dozens and dozens of times. I need to say it more often. And you need to say your transformative experience. Because people then are free to tell their own. And then they hold them as something they can remember when those days do come that are going to be drudgery. You know, Abraham had to march through all the stuff that somebody back at that age had to march through. All the nonsense, the fighting, the doubting, the worrying, to become who he became. Paul, you watched how Paul suffered from all those people to become who he became. And Jesus is going to have to walk to Jerusalem, put up with dull disciples who don't seem to understand anything, angry Pharisees who are trying to put him to death. He's going to walk these dusty roads, and he is going to have to struggle without these high points. Except, and this is something unique with Luke, Luke has Jesus pray before every major event in his life. I dare you to go to the Gospel of Luke and read through it. He does nothing important in his life happens without his praying. So again, how are you going to march through your mundane life? How are you going to study over there when you don't think this course is worth anything? I'm not ever going to use it again. But who needs statistics, for God's sakes? You know, there's no math professors in here, but who needs statistics? You know, but you got to go through each and every one of these steps. And how do you get through them? You have to be able to have a prayer life of some kind. It doesn't have to be a half hour a day, you know, but it has to be an awareness of God in your life and you in God's life. There is a connection between God and you need to make it, you need to be open. God can only shower you with grace, but you know, a lot of us are pretty good fighters. We knock it away. We keep that grace at bay. Prayer is how we open the door, and we let God's grace come upon us. And so if you want to have strength to bear the day, or if you want to be able to experience some new mountaintop experience, the way to do it is to pray. Have some kind of pattern of prayer. And again, we're so busy. We're so busy we can't do it. Well, I challenge you that you're not that busy. You know, there's a lot of little things you could cut out to give yourselves hours a day. I'm looking only for minutes. Will you come to be a companion of Jesus, where you can sit in conversation with him and ask him for help as the two of you journey to Jerusalem and beyond?